The Christmas my 3 children laughed and called me an old woman nobody wanted, I washed their dishes, hung up my coat, and walked out of the life I had spent 50 years building for them. They didn't know it, but by the time they told me to eat alone, I had already rewritten my will, moved my money, and made sure not one of them could ever use my name, my house, or my savings as a shortcut again. My name is Margaret Wells. I was 67 years old that Christmas, a retired nurse, a widow of 8 years, and mother to 3 adult children I had once believed would never let me grow old alone. Their names are David, Lisa, and Eric. By the end of this story, you may decide, as I did, that biology and family are not always the same thing. 1. Christmas morning, the last straw. That particular Christmas started like so many others in my life. Too early, too cold, and with me standing in someone else's kitchen basting a bird that wasn't mine. Mom, can you check the turkey again? Lisa called from the living room. The kids are starving. I just did. I called back, basting anyway. Another 20 minutes. Her new granite countertops gleamed under the recessed lights. Her Christmas tree, professionally decorated in matching gold and white ornaments, glowed in the corner. Someone on television sang about chestnuts roasting by an open fire. I wiped my hands and glanced at the clock. 11:45 a.m. We said we'd eat at noon. My eldest, David, reminded me as he strode past the kitchen doorway in his blazer, not bothering to look up from his phone. Angela's parents don't like to eat late. Angela, his wife, sat on the couch with her parents, perfectly coiffed, sipping something in a stemless glass. My grandchildren sat on the floor near the new television, eyes glued to a video game that featured more shooting than I'd like on a holiday about peace. 8 years earlier, I'd been the one hosting Christmas. Back then, the house was mine, the big old place James, and I had bought when the kids were small, the one with the creaky staircase and the drafty windows, and the fireplace that had never drawn quite right. For 25 years, I'd scrubbed floors, cooked meals, and strung lights across that house with my own hands. Then James died, a heart attack on a Tuesday morning while he brushed his teeth. One moment, he was humming some old Motown song. The next, he was on the bathroom floor, my hands pressed uselessly to his chest. The world shattered. Slowly, we picked up pieces. I sold his old truck. I adjusted to my pension instead of 2 incomes. I learned how to sleep alone. The children came around more at first. Grief pulled them back like a tide. We'll take care of you now, Mom. They promised, bringing casseroles and hugging me extra long. And they did for a while, until my house, my time, and my bank account became more useful to them as resources than as relics of their father. By the time that Christmas came around, the one where they told me to eat alone, I was no longer the woman at the head of the table. I was the extra chair. Mom, can you watch the rolls? Lisa called again. I need to finish my hair. I took a breath and reminded myself that I had chosen to be here. Sure, I said, because I always did. Make sure Dad, my in-laws, have enough ice. Angela added lightly, fluttering and wearing a red dress I knew cost more than my first couch. They get particular about their drinks. Of course, I said, already scooping ice into a glass. Eric, my youngest, strolled in behind her, wearing a T-shirt that said, I paused my game for this, under a wrinkled button-down. He opened the fridge, grabbed a beer, and popped the cap with his hand on the counter edge. Eric, use the opener, I said automatically. Relax, Mom, he muttered, rolling his eyes. It's just a counter. Just a counter. Just a house. Just my life. Hey, you didn't forget the green bean casserole, right? He added, already halfway back to the living room. I told my girlfriend, you make it the best. She's expecting it. No, please. No, thank you. Just expectation. I had, of course, remembered the green bean casserole. I'd brought it in a scratched Pyrex from my own smaller kitchen, where I now lived alone in a two-bedroom rental half an hour from the house I had once owned. The house I had signed over to David 2 years earlier. That part matters. You don't wake up one day and give your house to your eldest child for no reason. It happens with 100 small steps. The yard is too much for you to handle, Mom. It's not safe for you to be climbing ladders to clean gutters. That neighborhood is changing. You should move closer to us. They said all the right things. Concerned things. We could take over the mortgage. Oh, wait, you paid it off. Right. David laughed once, like my financial prudence was a quaint anecdote. Why don't we put the house in my name? He suggested later. It'll be easier when, down the line. Estate stuff. No probate drama. You can move into that cute condo near Lisa and live without worrying about repairs. Win-win. Lisa chimed in. Yeah, Mom, she said, we're all going to end up there eventually, right? Why not make it official now and give yourself a break? Eric shrugged. You could be like one of those cool retirees who travel all the time. He said, Airbnb? Mom, you're not using the house to its full economic potential. They spoke like a chorus, each voice hitting a different note that still sounded like care. No one mentioned that David and Angela's house hunt had stalled because prices were insane, or that they envied my lack of a mortgage. No one mentioned that the deed, once transferred, would put the only fully paid-off asset in our family under David's name. Not mine. Not ours. His. I resisted at first. This is your father's house. I said, my house. I'm not ready to leave it yet. We're not trying to push you out. David said, you can stay as long as you like, but let us handle the responsibilities. You took care of us for years. Let us take care of you. Eventually, I conceded. I was tired. The gutters were heavy. The stairs were hard on my knees. The big old place was full of ghosts at night. We met with a lawyer. He can't just throw you out. The lawyer assured me, we'll set it up as a life estate. You keep the right to live there until you choose otherwise. Then it passes cleanly to David. It sounded safe. It wasn't, because legal rights mean little if emotional pressure convinces you to give them up. Over the next year, the kids kept nudging. Mom, that condo near us just dropped in price. Mom, you said you get lonely at night. Wouldn't it be nice to be closer to the grandkids? Mom, it would give us all peace of mind if you weren't rattling around in that big old place alone. I started to feel selfish for wanting walls I knew and floors my feet had memorized. In the end, I moved out into a 2-bedroom condo 3 streets over from Lisa, half an hour from the old house. David and Angela moved in temporarily while they looked for their dream home. They stopped looking. Mom, hurry up. David snapped, now, from the dining room. We need to eat before the kids crash. I slid the turkey out, the heat burning my wrists, and set it on the counter. The dining room table was set for 10. White plates, polished silverware, cloth napkins folded into cute little trees. There were 8 adults, my 3 kids, their partners, and Angela's parents. 2 children, Lisa's kids, Emily and Jack. 9 chairs around the table, not 10. My place was not among them. I assumed, stupidly, that there must be another leaf somewhere. A folding chair. A plan. Where am I sitting? I asked, forcing a smile. David barely glanced up. Oh, he said, we thought you'd be more comfortable at the kitchen table. Fewer people. Quieter. You know how you say the noise gives you a headache? He gestured vaguely toward the small table in the corner of the kitchen, the one usually used for quick breakfasts. 1 chair. No room for another? I asked, my voice lighter than I felt. I don't mind a tight squeeze. He frowned. Mom, it's just logistics, he said. We only have 9 matching chairs. The kids need room. Angela's parents are guests. You said you didn't like sitting on those bar stools. Lisa chimed in from her end of the table, already pouring wine. Think of it like a chef's table, she said brightly. You're right by the kitchen. You can sit, relax, take your time. We'll bring you a plate. It's not a big deal. Eric smirked. Yeah, old woman, he joked, using the term he'd started throwing around lately in that way grown children sometimes do when they forget their parents are people. You're always saying you like peace and quiet. Now you get it. Angela laughed. Eric, she chided lightly, but there was no real reproach in it. Be nice. He grinned. I am being nice, he said. We're giving her the VIP spot. The words blurred. Old woman. Eat at the little table. We'll bring you a plate. I looked at their faces. My children. The ones I had carried, nursed, stayed up with through fevers and nightmares. They weren't sneering villains in that moment. They were careless, comfortable, so sure of my love and my obedience that they didn't see the lines they were crossing. Mom, you're not upset, are you? Lisa asked, noticing my silence. Please don't start crying. The kids pick up on it. Emily, my 8-year-old granddaughter, looked up from her game controller. Grandma cries a lot, she announced to no one in particular. Mom says it's hormones. They all chuckled. Something in me went very, very still. I'm not upset. I said quietly. I'm enlightened. David rolled his eyes. Here we go, he muttered. Every holiday. Eric laughed. Oh, come on, old woman, he said. Nobody wants drama. Just sit and eat. Enjoy the show. He raised his beer in a mock toast. Old woman, nobody wants you here. Eat alone, he said, half singing the words like a bad joke. Lisa snorted. Eric, she said, you're terrible. Angela's father laughed along, not understanding the history behind the words, just following the room's lead. My 3 kids laughed. The partners laughed. Even little Emily giggled, because laughter is contagious and children mimic what they see. I did not laugh. I looked around at the table that once would have been in my dining room, at the people who once crowded into my kitchen, begging for tastes of food, and can I help, Mom? At the single chair, by the small table, empty and waiting like a symbol. Then I did something none of them expected. I untied my apron. I set the carving knife down, and I walked to the hall closet, put on my coat, and picked up my bag. Where are you going? Lisa called, a note of alarm finally creeping into her voice. Home, I said. You can't just leave. David said, the food is done, I said. You can carve the turkey, David. You're very capable. You tell me that all the time. Mom, seriously, Lisa said, half rising. Don't make this a thing. Just sit at the kitchen table. We'll rotate. I looked at my 3 grown children. My whole life, I have cooked for you, I said calmly. Held you. Paid for your braces and your ballet and your car repairs. You have eaten at my table, slept under my roof, used my washing machine, my gas, my electricity, my time. My voice did not shake. I was surprised. Today, in the house that used to be mine, with my hands making your meal, you told me nobody wants me here. I said, you told me to eat alone. Mom, it was a joke, Eric said, suddenly uneasy. Then laugh, I replied. If it was funny. Silence. Angela looked down at her napkin. My grandchildren watched with round eyes. We'll talk about this later. David said stiffly, you're overreacting. No, I said, I'm finally reacting. I opened the front door. Cold air rushed in. Enjoy your Christmas, I said. It's the last one you will ever spend funded by my labor. And I walked out. No one followed me to the porch. I don't know if they were too stunned, too proud, or too sure I'd be back. Either way, the door shut behind me with a soft click that sounded, to my ears, like the end of a chapter. Before Christmas, the plan they didn't see. To understand why I could walk out so calmly, you need to know what had happened 3 weeks earlier. I didn't decide to cut my children out of my financial life because of a single cruel joke. That joke simply highlighted a truth I had been slowly waking up to. 2 months before Christmas, my friend Rosa had a stroke. She was 65, a fellow retired nurse I'd worked with for 15 years. No husband, 2 sons who lived 3 states away, and rarely called. When she collapsed in her kitchen, it was her neighbor who found her. Her sons arrived 2 days later, full of apologies about flights and work, and we got here as fast as we could. I visited her in the rehab center. She struggled to form words, frustration burning in her eyes. Her sons sat in the hallway arguing about who would take time off and how to handle her house. One of them said she should just sign it over. Then if she goes into a home, we can sell it and pay for care. They spoke like their mother's lifetime of scrimping, and saving was a chip to be cashed in. Driving home, something in my chest felt tight. I thought about my own children, about how, when I'd mentioned wanting to take a cruise with Rosa the year before, Lisa had said, "Must be nice to have that kind of extra money. Some of us are still paying off student loans, Mom. Maybe help your grandkids before you spend it all on yourself." About how David had said, only half joking, "Don't go dying somewhere expensive. Just make sure the house is in good shape for when we get it." About how Eric had asked, "If you kick it early, does my share of the life insurance clear my credit cards?" All said with laughter, all dismissed as just jokes. Until I saw what it looked like when adult children saw a parent's body as a vessel carrying assets they felt entitled to. Rosa's neighbor, who'd found her, stopped me in the parking lot. "She has a will," the neighbor said quietly. "Set up a few years ago. Left most of it to a charity she volunteers with. The boys are going to be furious. But she told me once, they have their own lives. This is mine." I thought about that for days. Then I made an appointment with a lawyer. Her name was Priya Patel, mid-40s, sharp eyes, endless patience. Her office smelled like coffee and paper. "What can I do for you, Mrs. Wells?" she asked, folding her hands on the desk. I set my worn leather purse down and took a breath. "I want to make sure my kids can't take anything from me I don't choose to give," I said. "Not now, and not when I'm dead." She smiled a little. "An excellent opening line," she said. "Tell me more." We went through my life. Pension, savings, the life estate on the house now occupied by David, the smaller condo I rented in my own name, the modest life insurance policy James had taken out years ago and I'd never let lapse, partly out of sentiment, partly out of stubbornness. "And your children's relationships with you?" she asked gently. I hesitated. "They love me," I said slowly, "in their way, but they've also gotten used to me being the catcher's mitt for all their crises." I listed them. The time I'd paid Lisa's overdue mortgage to save the kids from having to switch schools. The time I covered Eric's rent. Just this once, that turned into 3 times. The loan David insisted would help him invest in a sure thing that never repaid. "They always frame it as temporary," I said, "as if I have a pile of cash somewhere not tied to my own future. As if James left me a secret fortune instead of a small, careful nest egg we sweat over." Priya nodded. "And how much of that nest egg do you want them to inherit?" she asked. I blinked. "I don't know," I admitted. "Isn't that what mothers do? Leave things to their children?" "Mothers do what they want," she said. "Some leave everything to their children, grateful they have something to pass on. Some leave everything to cats. Some split it between children and causes or grandchildren. The point is choice, not obligation." The word choice landed oddly. "How much choice do I have?" I asked. "The house is already in David's name, technically." Technically, you have a life estate, she said. That means he can't force you out. But since you've already left, that protection is weakened. However, we can still adjust your will regarding anything else. And we can make it clear that your other assets go exactly where you direct. She leaned forward. Let me ask you this, she said. If you got hit by a bus tomorrow, who would you want to benefit from your work in James's work the most? Your kids, as they are now? Your grandkids directly? A charity? A struggling nurse, just like you once were? I thought of Rosa's decision, of my grandchildren's faces when they were small, sticky hands clutching mine at the park, of the way my children's eyes always darted toward my purse or the house walls when we talked about the future. I want my grandkids to have options, I said, for school, for starting out. I want the nurse who takes care of me someday to get a bonus, not just thanks. And I want my kids to know that love is not a down payment. She smiled. Good, she said. Then we'll make sure that's what happens. Together, we wrote a new will, a trust for each grandchild, releasing money only for education, first homes, or starting a business with a viable plan. A significant chunk to the hospital foundation where I'd worked, earmarked for nurse scholarships and patient support. A separate sum set aside for my care if I ever needed assisted living, managed by a third-party fiduciary, not by any of my children. And for David, Lisa, and Eric, a small fixed amount each, enough to buy a used car, maybe something I could afford to let go of without resenting it. Something that said, you are my children, but you are not my retirement plan, nor are my savings your prize. Priya added one more thing. If you want, she said, we can attach a letter of explanation. Not a legal document, but something the executor can read aloud if there's a dispute. Judges appreciate context. So do grandchildren when they're older. We drafted that letter together. In it, I wrote, to my children, I gave you everything I had when you were small, my time, my energy, my patience. As adults, you have your own lives. Your father and I built ours by working, saving, and sometimes going without. I expect you to do the same. My money is not a judgment on your worth. It is simply mine to direct. I choose to invest it where I believe it will do the most good, and where it will not be used to hurt or control anyone. Least of all me, if you are angry when you hear this, I ask you to sit with that anger and ask whether it is about love or entitlement. If it is the latter, then this letter is doing its job. I left Priya's office lighter than I had walked in. My children did not know any of this when Christmas came. They still thought of me as the safety net, the backup plan, the old woman who would always be there, stirring gravy and signing checks. They had no idea I had quietly cut the strings. 3. After walking out, letting the silence work. When I left David's house that Christmas, I didn't go straight back to my condo. I drove aimlessly for a while, past houses strung with lights, families visible through windows, laughing and clinking glasses. In one, I saw an older woman at the head of the table, grandchildren clustered around her, someone refilling her wine with a smile. For a moment, envy burned. Then I reminded myself envy wasn't helpful. Reality was. I stopped at a small, 24-hour diner by the highway, the kind with sticky laminated menus, an elderly waitress who calls everyone Han, and a security camera in the corner that no one thinks about. I sat in a booth, ordered a slice of apple pie and a Reuben sandwich I didn't particularly want, and let the warmth soak into my bones. The waitress, a woman about my age named Denise according to her name tag, set the plate down. Rough day, she asked, noticing, I guess, the way my hand still shook a little. Something like that, I said. She patted my shoulder. Families, she said knowingly. It's either the best or the worst. Huh? Sometimes both in the same hour, I said. We shared a wry smile. I ate half the sandwich, wrapped the rest in a napkin for later, and paid in cash. When I got back to my condo, the quiet was thick but not unfriendly. I hung up my coat. I put the green bean casserole in my own oven, reheated it, and put exactly as much on my plate as I wanted. I poured myself a glass of red wine from the bottle I'd bought for myself, not for any guest. I sat at my small kitchen table, lit a candle I liked, even though my children always complained that scented candles gave them headaches, and ate alone, but not lonely. There is a difference. My phone buzzed only once that afternoon. A text from Lisa. Lisa, Mom, where did you go? The kids are asking why you left. David's really upset. Can we talk about this later? I stared at it. I thought of all the laters that had never arrived. Later, we'll pay you back. Later, we'll help with the house. Later, we'll spend more time with you. I put the phone down without responding. Silence can be a shield. I slept well that night for the first time in months. Over the next week, the messages multiplied. From David. David, Mom, that was childish. You embarrassed us in front of Angela's parents. All you had to do was sit at the other table. David, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. We've always joked like that. David, if you're going to act like this, maybe we need to reevaluate holidays altogether. From Lisa. Lisa, the kids were confused and upset. You leaving like that made me the bad guy trying to explain. Lisa, I get that you feel hurt, but you also hurt us, Mom. Lisa, please answer. I don't want to fight. I just want to clear the air. From Eric. Eric, wow, Mom, way to ruin Christmas. Eric, it was a joke. You always say you don't like noise. We thought we were doing you a favor. Eric, whatever. I'm done trying. I read them all. I replied to none. Instead, I forwarded them to Priya with a short note. For context, in case we ever need to show a judge the pattern. She wrote back, smart, keep saving everything. And remember, not engaging is sometimes your most powerful move. A few days later, I got a different kind of message. A call from my bank. Not Harborview this time. A smaller credit union where I kept a separate, tiny checking account labeled in my mind as Mad Money. Mrs. Wells, the woman on the phone asked, "This is Cindy from Riverway Credit Union. I'm calling because someone attempted to log into your online banking from an unrecognized device several times and then requested a password reset." My spine stiffened. Who? I asked. We can't see the person, she said. Only the IP address. But the security question they answered incorrectly was, what is your oldest child's middle name? Only 3 people knew that answer other than me. Me and my 2 oldest. Thank you, I said. Please lock the account until I come in person with ID. Already done, she said. I went in the next day, set up 2-factor authentication, and changed my questions to things no one else could guess. I also changed the locks on my condo and moved my important papers, a copy of my new will, the deed records, insurance policies, into a safe deposit box at Harborview. The next time my children came knocking, figuratively or literally, they would find fewer handles to grab onto. For the invitation they didn't expect. 3 weeks after Christmas, I sent my children an invitation of my own. A simple text in a group thread we rarely used because they preferred one-off conversations that let them control the narrative. Me. I'd like to have a family meeting this Sunday at 3 p.m. at Priya Patel's office, address attached. It concerns my estate planning and will. Please attend. The replies came quickly. Lisa, estate planning? Are you okay? David, why are you involving a lawyer without talking to us first? Eric, LOL, are you dying? JK, I let the ridiculousness of Eric's comment go and replied, me, I am fine. This is routine. I'd like to do it once with all of us present, so there's no confusion later. There was some initial pushback. David, this is unnecessary. We can handle these things as a family, not in front of strangers. Lisa, yeah, Mom. It feels cold. Me, considering how family has handled things so far, I prefer the presence of a professional. I will be there at 2:45. You may come or not. The decisions have already been made. Silence. Then, slowly, Lisa, I'll come. David, fine. I'll be there. Eric, free food? Me, no. This is not a party. Eric, ugh. Okay. On Sunday, I arrived 10 minutes early at Priya's small office, hands only mildly trembling. She greeted me in the lobby with a firm handshake and a reassuring smile. Ready? She asked. Ready as I'll ever be, I said. We went over the basics one more time. You're allowed to change this at any time as long as you're of sound mind, she reminded me. Today is about clarity, not approval. They don't have to like it. I know, I said, but I want them to hear it from both of us. So later, if they try to spin it, there are witnesses. At exactly 3:02 p.m., David and Angela walked in. He wore his business suit, as if dressing for battle. Angela looked uncomfortable, but politely neutral. At 3:07, Lisa arrived alone, eyes puffy as if she'd been crying. At 3:15, Eric strolled in wearing a hoodie, headphones around his neck, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. This is quite formal, David said, glancing around the small conference room as Priya motioned them to sit. It's important, I said. Ms. Patel, Priya introduced herself. Your mother has engaged me to assist with her estate planning. Today is simply an informational meeting, so everyone hears the same thing. Is this because of Christmas? Lisa blurted, tears already gathering. Because we messed up the chairs? Mom, we said we were sorry. You texted that you were sorry you had to explain my absence to your children. I corrected gently, not that you were sorry for how you treated me. She flinched. Maybe we can focus, Priya interjected smoothly, taking control. We have a lot to cover. She slid a folder onto the table, one copy for each of them. Inside is a summary of your mother's assets and how they are currently designated in her will, she said. This document is not the will itself, but a summary for your understanding. The will is on file with me, and will go through probate like any other when the time comes. David bristled. Should we have our own lawyers present? He asked. Priya smiled thinly. You are free to hire counsel at any time, she said. Today's meeting is purely informational. None of you are being asked to sign anything. He sat back, slightly mollified. She began. Your mother receives a pension from her years as a nurse and has personal savings totaling approximately, she named a modest but not insignificant number. She also retains a life insurance policy and rights to a small condo she rents. She outlined the trusts for the grandchildren. When each grandchild turns 18, funds will be available for education or a first home managed by a trustee not related to the family. She said, this ensures there is no pressure on them from any adult to direct the money a certain way. Lisa nodded slowly, some pride softening her panic at the idea of missing out herself. That's generous, she said. Thank you, Mom. David's jaw tightened. And for us, he asked. Priya slid another page forward. As of the latest will, she said, each of you, David, Lisa, and Eric, will receive a one-time bequest of, she named an amount that was far from nothing but nowhere near what they'd imagined. Beyond that, no additional assets are directed to you. Lisa's eyes widened. What? She whispered. Eric let out a low whistle. That's it, he said. After everything we've done for you. I held back a very uncharitable laugh. Everything you've done for me. I repeated. Do you mean the times you dropped your children off for me to babysit while you went on vacations I couldn't afford? Or when you borrowed money and never repaid it? Eric flushed. Mom, come on, he said. That's not what I meant. David's face went red. Where's the rest going? He demanded. To charity? To strangers? To cats? To your children, Priya said evenly. To causes your mother cares about. To her own future medical care. So she will never have to call you and ask to sleep on your couch if she can't afford an assisted living facility. That's what family is for, Lisa protested. We'd never. You already did. I said quietly. You made a joke, several, in fact, about putting me in a home the minute I start wandering or causing trouble. You talked about my house as if it were an asset waiting patiently to be liquidated, not the place your father and I built our life. David slammed his hand on the table. I was angry when I said those things. He snapped. Divorce is messy. We all said things we didn't mean. That's interesting, Priya said calmly. Because I have here, she tapped another document. Records of conversations during your mother's divorce mediation where you insisted on a larger share of the marital assets, citing your future need for a bigger house, while simultaneously arguing that your mother should downsize because she was past needing so much space. His mouth opened. No sound came out. This isn't fair, Lisa said, blinking back tears. We just assumed. That my money was your contingency plan. I finished. I know. Eric crossed his arms. What about the house? He asked bluntly. David gets it automatically because it's in his name, right? So he hits the jackpot, and we get crumbs. David shot him a warning glare. It's not a jackpot, he said. It's responsibility, taxes, maintenance, and a $500,000 asset, Priya added coolly, which your mother has chosen to view as a gift she has already given. It is not part of this will. The rest is hers to direct. David stared at me. You're punishing us for one bad day, he said. For a joke. My hands trembled slightly, but my voice stayed steady. This is not about one day, I said. This is about years of treating me as an inexhaustible resource. Years of assuming I would always fund your choices, cover your mistakes, host your holidays, and smile while you talked about my life like a line item in your financial plans. I met each of their eyes in turn. Christmas was not the cause, I said. It was the confirmation. Lisa cried. I can't believe you do this, she sobbed. To your own children. I felt a deep, old sadness. I did a lot more than this for my children, I said softly. I carried you, fed you, drove you to practices, sat in ER waiting rooms, stayed up nights worrying about your futures. This, I gestured to the papers. This is me choosing not to spend the last chapter of my life worrying that you will only show up when there's something to take. It's about boundaries, Priya added, not punishment. David stood abruptly. Come on, he said to Angela. We don't have to sit here and listen to this. Angela hesitated. I think you should, she said quietly. She's not saying you get nothing. She's saying you don't get everything. He stared at her, betrayed. You're siding with her? He demanded. I'm siding with reality, she said. Your mother's money is hers. We can build our own. Lisa sniffed. You've always liked her more than us, she accused me. You gave her the good jewelry at the wedding. I almost laughed. If you measure love in jewelry and inheritance, I said, then I suppose you're right. I like anyone more than that mindset. Eric shook his head. You raised us to share, he said, to think of family as a unit. Now you're, what? Going individualist on us. I raised you to share, I said, not to consume. There's a difference. 5. The letter and the aftermath. At the end of the meeting, Priya asked if I wanted to read my letter aloud or leave it to be discovered later. I chose to read it, not because I enjoy watching my children squirm, though I won't pretend there wasn't a flicker of satisfaction. But because I wanted no room for we didn't know, or she wasn't in her right mind, I unfolded the paper. My voice shook only on the first line. To my children, I read, "If you are hearing this, it means I have either died or I have decided my decisions require explanation while I am still here to give it." They shifted uncomfortably. I continued, "You may feel angry. You may feel hurt. You may feel that you deserve more than what is written in these documents. You do not." Eric snorted. I ignored him. "Your father and I built our lives from almost nothing." I read, "We did not have parents who could pay our rent or co-sign our mortgages. We had jobs. We had each other. We had hand-me-down furniture and coupons. We were not always wise, but we were always responsible. When you were small, we did what we could to give you more options than we had. Sometimes we overextended, thinking love meant never saying no. That was our mistake. This letter is my attempt not to repeat it." Lisa looked down, tears dripping onto the folder. "My money is not a measure of my love." I read, "If I leave you less than you expect, it is not because I love you less. It is because I trust that you are capable adults who can work and earn and budget, just as I did." I took a breath. "If, however, you find yourself more upset about the number on a page than you ever were about the time we spent together, then I hope you will someday examine whether what you wanted from me was a mother or a bank." Silence. To my grandchildren, I finished more softly. "I hope these funds help you study what you love, build safe homes, or start honest businesses. I hope they free you from some burden, not make you into burdens. Your parents may not understand this letter now. You may not either. But I hope that one day you will see that the greatest gift I could leave you is not money, but a different script about what family and obligation mean." When I finished, I folded the letter and slipped it back into the folder. Priya cleared her throat. "That concludes what we needed to cover today," she said. "You are, of course, free to discuss this among yourselves later. But any changes to your mother's wishes will come from her. No one else." David stood. "Come on," he said again, this time with less bluster and more defeat. "We're done here." He walked out. Angela paused, looked at me. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "for what you went through, and for where my husband is still blind." I squeezed her hand. "That's for you two to sort out." I said, "You've been kind to me. That's more than I can say for some others." She gave a small, sad smile and followed David. Lisa approached me slowly. "Mom," she said, eyes red, "can we start over? Somehow." I looked at my middle child. Once, she'd been the girl who crawled into my bed after nightmares, who'd cried when a butterfly died on windowsill. Now she was a woman who'd laughed when her brother called me an old woman and told me to eat alone. "Yes," I said, "we can. If you want to start over as two adults, not as a child and a dispenser of favors. That means sometimes you'll hear, 'No.' It also means I'll stop keeping score." She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I think I'd like that," she whispered. Eric lingered near the door. "You're really okay just giving most of it to strangers?" he asked, bitterness covering hurt. "They won't be strangers to the people they help," I said. "And you have time to become less of a stranger to me, if you choose." He rolled his eyes, but it was half-hearted. "We'll see," he muttered. In the months that followed, things didn't magically transform. David remained mostly distant, our communication limited to occasional updates about the grandchildren and stiff holiday texts. Lisa made an effort. She invited me over for coffee, not just when she needed childcare, but just because. She apologized once, over a sink full of dishes, for not realizing how much I'd still been doing for them. "I think I got so used to seeing you, as Mom, that I forgot you're you," she said. "A person with limits. We all forget that about our mothers. I said, until we become them. Eric took longer. He cycled through anger, sulking, and attempts at guilt. You're really going to make me struggle? He asked once. You could clear my debt with a pen stroke. I could, I said, but why should I? Clearing your debt without you changing your habits would just reset the timer on the next crisis. He called me cold. I called him accountable. Eventually, he stopped asking for money and started asking for advice about jobs, about budgeting, about what it meant to be a grown man who wasn't always on the verge of catastrophe. We're still working on that one. As for me, I found a different rhythm. I hosted smaller holidays at my condo with people who actually wanted to be there. My neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, whose children lived across the country and rarely visited. 2 former nursing colleagues, both widows, who'd been eating frozen dinners alone before we decided to pool our resources, and company. My sister's grandson, who was in college nearby and appreciated any meal that wasn't ramen. We sat at my small table, mismatched chairs and all, and no one ever suggested I sit in the kitchen. Sometimes we even joked about being old women, but in our mouths, the words were affectionate, not weapons. People sometimes ask, when they hear this story, if I regret cutting my children out of most of my estate, if I worry they'll resent me forever. The truth is, resentment is not a thing you can prevent in other people. It is a seed they choose to water or not. My job is not to leave my children happy when I die. My job is to live in a way that doesn't betray myself while I'm still here. If, when the time comes, they feel cheated because they got less money than they hoped, rather than thankful for the years of care they received, then my will didn't cause that. It revealed it. That Christmas, when my 3 kids laughed and told me, "Old woman, nobody wants you here. Eat alone," they thought they were making a joke. They thought I would do what I had always done, swallow the hurt, smile, and keep serving. They had no idea that within weeks, their words would echo in a lawyer's office as I signed a document that ensured my last act, as their mother would not be funding their contempt. In the end, my revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was a series of quiet decisions: picking up the phone, making an appointment, moving papers from a kitchen drawer to a bank box, walking out of a house that no longer felt like home. It was the choice to believe, finally, that my worth was not measured by how much of myself I could give away without complaint. If you're listening to this and feel like the extra chair at your own family table, I hope my story reminds you. You are allowed to get up. You are allowed to take your plate, your coat, and your name back. You are allowed to eat alone, for a while, if that's what it takes to remember you were never meant to live as someone else's afterthought. Because sometimes the most powerful thing an old woman can do is quietly rearrange who inherits what, and who inherits the story of who she really was.